Welcome to another episode of Distory with Kate and Kirk. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and today we're diverging off of our Tower of Terror series to do a little Christmas overlay of our own. Kate and I have rustled up 3 fantastically jingle belly filled stories to teach you some things about the Disney parks that are related to Christmas. With me to dive into this very merry episode of Distory is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's so wonderful to be able to take just a little brief break from Tower, and we both found 3 really interesting stories. And the most fun part about doing these kinds of episodes is we have no idea what the other person is bringing to the table. So we both get to learn something new, which I think is really fun. As usual, I like to make you go first because why not? So I know you're thrilled about that.
I'm so nervous, dude, because Kate, all right. For my first story, I'd like to talk about what I think is the best adaptation of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. But this one has a twist because our narrator is a blue alien and a talking rat. Of course, I'm talking about A Muppet Christmas Carol, which is a perennial favorite in our household, and we consistently watch it. There are a couple of things that are unique about this feature, and I could easily do several episodes on A Muppet Christmas Carol alone, but I'm just going to high spot a couple of details because it's interesting in both how they did some things. It's kind of like a little bit of a behind the scenes, the history of it, and why is it so accurate an adaptation to Charles Dickens. So we're actually going to look at the movie script, and we are going to then look at the prose that was written for the novella. So to start off, the reason why this is most significant is this is the first full feature film after the passing of Jim Henson, which I listened to a lot of Jim Henson doing prep for this. It is remarkable how much his regular spoken voice sounds like Kermit. I mean, the guy is really? Kermit. It's so crazy.
That's fun.
But this was a big deal because Brian Henson, his son, was going to be taking over the Jim Henson Company. People were really nervous about how that would look. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure to make this a success because they've done so many innovative things in the space of puppetry. One of which is one of my favorites, this is in just the Muppet movie, is how they make Kermit use a full bicycle. And this is going to lead us up. So we're using this as a foundational, unique way to do puppetry because a brand new system is created for A Muppet Christmas Carol. So it's a technological advance that had never been done before. It's a unique enhancement that, now it's, when we think about films, this is like secondhand, like we see it used all the time. And in fact, like things have really progressed. But anyway, originally, the puppet, and this was pure magic to me, or Disney magic in a form, is when you see Kermit riding a bike by himself. I never figured out how to do this until I researched this because it's so crazy. And you could try to come up with reasons and how they do it. Originally, it started out with a remote control bike. However, the bike would constantly break on set. So, and instead, they developed a use of a marionetted Kermit that is on a bike. The bike is being pulled on monofilament wire, and Kermit is being marionetted from the top of a crane. So at this scene, we're going to see Kermit on a bike, and these are the monofilament strings you can see here that are highlighted here.
Oh, that's cool.
And as he's going past, it's going to stop right here, and you'll be able to see above him a crane where the operators are puppeteering Kermit from above.
Oh.
So everything was done from above with the monofilament lines as well as the puppeteering. So literally it was a guy on a crane moving Kermit. Now, they did have some up-close shots, which I think really add to the level of realism, and these were done by puppeteering by hand. So all the close-ups, we're seeing Kermit with the handlebars and his body. We're not seeing the lower half, and that's when, for the up-close shots, they're doing more technical movements with both his hand and his head. So This Kermit bike scene is what leads us to layering on a much more advanced technique that we see in A Muppet Christmas Carol. We're in the timeline of the movie when they are in Christmas present, and you get to see Bob Cratchit, which is Kermit, and Tiny Tim walking on the street. Now, they have free moving legs, they're singing, they're talking, they're moving their hands, and below them, the floor is moving. So it looks like he's just walking.
Yeah.
And I never knew how to do this either. I thought this was super fascinating. Well, this was done using blue screen technology. So I have a picture of what the puppeteers looked like. They were all dressed in blue, right? And they actually would wear hoods over them as well. So they were puppeteering right directly behind Tiny Tim and Bob Cratchit. And below them was a barrel. And this barrel would spin. So it would turn and spin as they were moving his legs and dancing about. And that's how they were able to create the effect. And they just erased the puppeteers from the scene and replaced it with that static background image. So that's how they got him walking and talking with little Tiny Tim.
I never would have guessed that was a barrel. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's like a painted barrel that rotates, and the rotation is what it makes, because of the perspective and the way that it's shot with the angles. You can now kind of tell that it's rotating out of a horizontal space.
Oh yeah,
as that turns and spins. All right, next we now have to go to talk about the prose of Dickens in conjunction with the prose of the Muppet Christmas Carol, because a lot of people don't realize how many lines from the movie were taken directly from the actual story itself. So I spent way too much time scouring over both the script, which is 42 pages of dialogue for the Muppets Christmas, as well as Charles Dickens' novel, which is, again, another 80 some odd, 91 pages long. Although these ones have illustrations, which is really nice. But
that is cool.
Yeah, it's always good. Without further ado, let me go. We'll do a handful of lines, and we'll talk about what is in Charles Dickens and what is then in A Christmas Carol. Specifically, most of the lines are through Gonzo as the narrator, who is taking, it's kind of unique because he's omniscient. There's very meta things about the Jim Henson Company. If you've never heard of the term Gonzo journalism, that's when you inject yourself in the story to tell a story. So like if you were a reporter and you're reporting on an event, but you're a part of the report, that makes it Gonzo journalism. That came from Hunter S. Thompson. But Gonzo is literally doing like Gonzo narration of A Christmas Carol, which is like very meta, and I love that.
That's funny. I never
They're
thought of that. They're
super clever and brilliant in the way that they created this film and all the Muppets. Like, I think that's one of the things as a Muppet fan, you just get impressed by the fact that they spent so much time and attention to create a family story, but wanted to make it period accurate. So this is the beginning opening for Muppet's Christmas Carol. And we're seeing London, the time period of when this was made for Charles Dickens as well. And I'm going to cut across to our narrators, who are Charles Dickens, a.k.a. Gonzo, and Rizzo. So it opens up to this busy Victorian street market where the great Gonzo calls himself Charles Dickens with his skeptical sidekick, Rizzo the Rat. And right out of the gate, he says, "I know the story of A Christmas Carol like the back of my hand." And Rizzo says, "Prove it." And then Gonzo starts describing his hand. And he goes, "No, the story." And so he starts with, in the Muppet script, it goes, "Jacob Marley was dead to begin with, as dead as a doornail." And Rizzo's like, "Oh, that's creepy." But the book itself, the very first line of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and from here on out, to make it easier, I'm just going to say the book versus Muppets, or book versus the movie script.
Yeah.
The book has Marley was dead to begin with. And then it's a little bit later down in that same exact paragraph, old Marley was as dead as a doornail. So verbatim, starts the story with the book and the script are identical.
I love that they add some levity in there, though. It's like, that's
well, dude, it's the Muppets.
the Muppets,
Dude, there's
yeah.
no way you can not have, some levity. So now we get the introduction of Michael Caine, who is our Ebenezer Scrooge, and the Muppets are all terrified and getting out of his way. And in the book, they're talking about setting up Scrooge before he walks into the scene. Gonzo says, "He was hard and sharp as flint, secretive, self-contained, as solitary as an oyster." Now, the book says, "Hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire." So they cut that section out, but then kept secret and self-contained, solitary as an oyster. Then they go on to talk about, as he's entering into the accountant's office, Gonzo calls him tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, clutching, covetous old sinner. And that, my friends, is identical to the book.
Nice. All right.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we're inside and the rats are, complaining and it's super, super cold, we have the nephew Fred come in and start talking to Scrooge, and Scrooge is obviously not being quite nice. In the Muppets, they say, "Christmas, a humbug, uncle. You don't mean that, surely." In the book, it says, "Christmas, a humbug, uncle," said Scrooge's nephew. "You don't mean that, I'm sure." So they changed "I'm sure" and "surely."
It's pretty close, though. Yeah.
The amount of prose that's in here that is very similar was shocking to me. And it makes me like A Christmas Carol so much more because it's closer to the storyline.
Yeah.
You know?
That's great.
Let's see if we can get to where the first ghosts. Marley and Marley. Ooh, we're Marley and Marley. Ooh. So Scrooge goes home for the night. As he reaches his front door, the heavy brass knockers suddenly transforms, and imagery of the Marley's face. So, all right. So for those that don't know this film, it's Statler and Waldorf are the characters that you see present as the Marley's ghost. In the Muppets, he says, "Not a knocker, but Marley's face." That's identical. Same with, they both use the line, "Darkness was cheap," and Scrooge liked it, as he's walking through the house. Scrooge is trying to explain why he's seeing these premonitions. And you actually see he's eating food, and then he starts pointing at the Marley brothers and trying to explain to them that they aren't real. And in that level of trying to create semblance and order out of disorder and premonitions and hallucinations, in the Muppets version, he says, "You may be a bit of undigested beef, a blob of mustard, a crumb of cheese. There's more of gravy than grave about you." This one, slightly different language, but similar. This is in the book. "Undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese," and then the same phrase, "There's more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are." So he doesn't say "whatever you are" in the Muppets version, but they do in the...
It's pretty close, though.
The book version. Yeah. I mean, out of all of this, the one thing that you'll get is that it's very, very similar. Now we're gonna jump ahead because I could do this for hours because there's so many lines. If you get anything out of what I'm talking about, listen to the language as you watch A Muppet's Christmas Carol and understand that they really, if you're hearing something that sounds like Old English, it is almost 100% the prose that's within the novel itself, rather than scripting that was written by the Jim Henson Company. In the very end, they're in Christmas morning, everyone's excited, and we finally get the ending for Scrooge. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well if any man alive possessed the knowledge. And that's how we close out both the story and A Muppet's Christmas Carol.
Wonderful. That's so great.
There you go.
I love it.
So it is more real than you think it is. And they did a really wonderful job in creating some fun movie effects. And it proved that the Jim Henson Company can exist after Jim Henson was alive and allowed us to have something that's really a wonderful tradition, at least for Christmas in our family.
Yeah, spectacular movie. I love watching that one with my kids. It's so great. All right. Well, thank you, Kirk, for that first story. I'm going to take us in a little bit of a different direction. I'm going to take us back in time to the very first Christmas in Disneyland in 1955. I wanted to dig into this topic more because I'm writing a historical fiction currently that is set in 1955, and my plan is to hopefully take us through December of that year, because usually we just hear about the opening of Disneyland, but we don't hear too much about what happened in those months after. So that's my goal in writing this book, is to kind of tell more of that story. I wanted to take us specifically, though, to Christmas for this special. So they wanted Disneyland to be a year-round park. They didn't want it to be a seasonal one where it only opens for the summertime or spring break or whatever. They wanted it to be year-round. But the first year, honestly, attendance was kind of abysmal around Christmas time. There wasn't that many people there. Ron Dominguez said that you could shoot a cannon through the park at any given time and not hit a single guest. That was how empty it was. So they were struggling a little bit that first year, and they had pretty sparse decor. So I actually do have some photos for you of what Disneyland's decor looked like its very first year that it was open. You can see a few decorations over the railroad station. There's some garland, but that's pretty much all you see as you walk up to Disneyland. And then this is what Main Street USA looked like, or at least part of it. You can see this is the horse-drawn fire engine that they now have stored in the firehouse. But you can see just there's a lot of garland and some wreaths and whatnot, but that's pretty much it. There's not a lot of photos from this era because not a lot of people went there during this time. So just bear with me here because the photo quality is going to get a little bit rough. This is actually a screen grab from a short video that I found from December of 1955. You can see they had these like wooden cutouts that they made, and they put on like the second story of places in Main Street USA. This one is, I think it's supposed to be Cinderella's carriage. And then some other cutouts they had was these, I think they're supposed to be carolers because they're holding some candles. They're like maybe children with like long night dresses on. And then one of them has a star, almost like they're doing like maybe a nativity or something, but there's just these like painted wooded cutouts that they had on the second story, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then they had like these Dickens carolers. This is the Christmas tree that was in Town Square, which is huge, honestly. It's like as tall as the Emporium, so very, very big tree. And then they also had another tree, though, where the partner statue is now, if you're looking down Main Street towards the castle. Obviously, they don't put a tree there now because the statue's there, but I thought that was interesting. They didn't just have one tree, they had two on Main Street. But again, you can see there's not many people here. It's kind of a ghost town in Disneyland at this point. They did have wreaths on the lamp posts. You can see that this is also, I wanted to point out, in case you don't know, they used to have street signs on these lamp posts, which is one of my favorite things to mention, because I'm mad that we don't have the street signs on them anymore. And this would say East and West Plaza Street, which would be what we're looking at here. And then they would also have East and West Center Street and then in Town Square on the opposite end. But for some reason, those street signs disappeared in the 1960s and never came back for whatever reason. And then this is what the castle looked like. As you approach, there are these like upside down triangular banners with a wreath at the top of each of them. And then there's just a tiny little wreath above the entryway with some garland that's dipping down, and that's it. There's no lights or anything. It's pretty sparse. Then this is looking towards the entrance to Frontierland. You can also see some wreath and garland there. And this is from the opposite side, just a better look, a little clearer picture of the decorations for that. But they didn't just have stuff on Main Street USA. They did have a whole area that was called the Christmas Bowl. So this was an area of the park that was called Magnolia Park. And it had the gazebo that was meant for Town Square in Disneyland. They actually moved it a couple times, but they moved it eventually to Magnolia Park here. It was essentially like a bandstand so people could come listen to the band play. There's a whole bunch of benches, and there's a big entryway to it that kind of crosses over a waterway. So what we're seeing here is a whole bunch of white trees with some ornaments in them. And it says, there's a sign that says Christmas Bowl with a wreath above it. And then just lots of people watching a show or concert. And they also invited choirs to come sing at this event on the bandstand. And then that's why they christened it the Christmas Bowl. This is probably the most Christmas decoration we see outside of the Christmas trees on Main Street, Kirk. This is kind of the very earliest beginnings of what we would call the candlelight processional before it started processing in 1957. But this is the very earliest iteration where they did invite local choirs to come and sing, which I love the community aspect of Disneyland that they used to have back in the day, where they really wanted to involve everybody in it. And that was partially just to boost attendance. So they even had in Halloween time, they had like a jack-o'-lantern contest for locals to come in and like have their, they would judge their jack-o'-lantern and whatnot. They really did everything they could in the off season to try to get people to come in. So if you're going to see somebody singing in the choir in Disneyland, you're going to go on down to Disneyland and go to the Christmas Bowl, right? So that's why they had these things going on here. And you can also see the band playing, and they had some dancers. And then this one I thought was really quite funny because they have a man who is balancing a table on his chin. It wasn't just the normal choir singing. There was also some other things that happened during the Christmas Bowl as well. But anyway, just thought that was kind of an interesting perspective. And the other thing I noticed in this particular photo was this is when fire hydrants were still red, because a lot of them are painted, go away green or hidden under objects. But this one is still very vibrant red in this picture, which I think is really interesting. The other things that happened during this time, and this is something we've mentioned on Distory before, is the Mickey Mouse Club Circus. That first Christmas, which you don't necessarily automatically associate Christmas and circus, but that was Walt Disney's kind of dream, is that he wanted it. There's stories about a very heated argument that he and C.B. Wood had about it, because he's like, this is ridiculous. Why would we spend all this money on all of the circus stuff when like people don't come here for the circus? And Walt was like, no, we're going to do this. So the Mickey Mouse Club Circus opened Thanksgiving Day, November 24th, 1955. And I have something from the Disneyland News from November of 1955. It says, Walt's latest venture marks his first entry into the circus field, and the show promises to be one of the greatest things he has done. Titled the Mickey Mouse Club Circus, it will present animal acts and aerialists, clowns and elephants, and introduce to the public for the very first time in person the Mickey Mouse Club Mouseketeers, including Jimmy Dodd, the Grand Mouseketeer as ringmaster, and Roy Williams, the Big Mooseketeer, as the circus strongman. So the circus tent, I think I have kind of a close-up here of what the entranceway looked like, decorated with its Christmas decor. Then this is what the main entrance looked like to this tent. I think I have an overview too. So you can see truly how large this tent was. It was $30,000 for this tent, which is crazy amount of money in 1955. And that was actually paid for by Disney Studios because they assumed they could, use it for some sort of movie. And that was why they got it. But the circus tent was located roughly where the Matterhorn is today, not exactly in the same location because of they had Holiday Hill there, which was all the fill dirt from the moat that they just piled into a big pile. But the circus featured 3 75-minute performances every day, 4 on weekends, including Christmas and New Year's for 6 weeks. You can see a ticket here from it of what this looked like. And then here's a little bit more of the inside of the tent. This was the longest live-action Disney show to date, like in duration, because 75 minutes is a long time for a show.
Yeah. I can't even make ones that are 45.
No.
There ain't no way I'm making that.
And you had to pay a separate ticket for it, so it was like not even included in your admission. The show is considered part of the 1955 Christmas Festival at Disneyland. And then the grand finale of the show, Ringmaster Jimmy Dodd proclaimed, "It's a time when even the toys seem to come to life." Oh, I forgot I also had this really fun shot of a seal balancing a ball on its nose. It really was like a circus. But this is the finale. This is called the Santa Claus Parade. The Mouseketeers dressed up as toys, animals, nursery rhyme characters, and toy soldiers and marched to the music of Victor Herbert's Babes in Toyland. After the Parade of Toys, When You Wish Upon a Star played, and then they had the Magic Christmas Tree, which was 40 feet in 20 seconds is what it would grow. So essentially it was like this white fabric tree would rise up from the ground, and then the shining star would be at the top of the tent to come down for it. So it just this tree would grow out as if from nowhere. And that was the grand finale of the show. And then Jimmy Dodd and the Mouseketeers would ring bells and lead the crowd in singing Jingle Bells. And then Santa and the sleigh would appear, which is what we're seeing here. The circus closed in January 8th in 1956 due to poor attendance and guests not wanting to come to Disneyland to see a circus that required additional admission. They weren't there for the circus, man. They were there for other reasons. So they quickly learned that Disneyland was its own thing, and the circus can be the circus, and they don't need to be at the same location. And so that was the last time Disney, well, they did do other circus things, obviously, at Disney and Disney history, but that was the last time they had like true circus like this. But the other thing they had was a parade to draw people to the circus, essentially, from, Main Street or wherever they were at. It was circus themed and had live animals and authentic wagons. They also had some clowns. And I have this really creepy picture of a clown with this woman and her child who looks a little bit scared of him. So that's quite fun. They also had some holiday touches like 3 wise men and camels. And according to the Disneyland News of November 1955, action will get underway Thanksgiving Day with an old-time circus parade up Main Street. The entire circus cast, animals, acrobat clowns, and Mouseketeers will march or be pulled in magnificent original circus wagons. The parade will be climaxed by the official lighting of Disneyland's old-fashioned Christmas displays, and the entire Main Street will sparkle from the illumination of colored lights on every building and in every shop window. There was a couple of mishaps, though, Kirk, that happened in this time, just to kind of close out this section of Disneyland's first year, which, 1955 Disneyland was a little bit of a chaotic time anyway, so it makes sense that this would also have a little bit of chaos. So there were llamas that escaped and ran down Main Street, spitting at guests. A black panther bit the paw off of another animal because their cages were too close together in front of a live and horrified audience. And then one aerialist's top came undone as she literally flew through the air and couldn't grab it before she had to clasp hands with the man catching her on the other trapeze. So
I know you didn't put a picture of that up.
I did not know. I did find some footage of some aerialists, but I'm pretty sure she has her top on. It's hard to tell though, because it's pretty grainy. So. But in any case, it was a little bit of a chaotic time, and eventually Disneyland's attendance, of course, went up, and that's why we have it today. But I like visiting Disneyland 1955 because it was just kind of a cute, quaint time when things weren't perfect all the time.
Yeah. First of all, I didn't really talk. I was so fascinated by watching or looking at all of those photos. Like, it just, first of all, chain link fence, crazy to see that. Because, I'm so used to it being so polished. It is cool, though, they had those cutout ornaments in the front as well. And then lots of little overlay ones. And, it really kind of is lost. But I kind of like those weird white Christmas trees like they had at the Christmas ball. There's something like old school nostalgic with that style, and they probably were metal, because
like
back then they didn't have like the right exactly. So
well, they used to put ones like that in the moat too in Disneyland. Like they would have a tree on either side of the moat in front of the castle that were like that.
Okay.
Sometimes they were silver, sometimes they were white. Like they changed colors over the years, but I'm kind of bummed that we don't have those anymore because it was kind of neat to have them there.
Silver and gold, silver and gold.
All right. What do you got for the second story there, Kirk?
For my second story, I'd like to take us from Austria's traditions and bring them to Orlando, Florida.
All right.
And I'm talking about the beloved gingerbread house, which sadly for this year, 2025, due to the construction of the new birdcage bar that they were building, we do not have this would have been its 26th year, as the gingerbread house was created in 1999. So let's dive into the history of why we have a gingerbread house in the Grand Floridian. And there's only one person to blame: executive chef, pastry chef, Eric Herbitschek, who was an Austrian and really missed from back home the Christkindl market. Now, I found this one. This just happens to be in Carmel, Indiana, but I felt like it was a good representation of what these look like. They are beautiful.
Yeah.
Just absolutely gorgeous Christmas market. So Christkindl market just means a Christmas market. There are over 60 huts at this one with unique gifts and holiday music, artists, food, all of those kind of things that people really like. They also have, ice skating, puppetry, little shows. Kind of like if you took the Christmas bowl, but then turned it into a giant Christmas market around it, is the vibe that you kind of get from one of these.
Yeah.
So fun. Eric Herbitschek was used to having that in Austria, and he wanted something that wasn't just a display piece. He wanted to be more of a functional, and this is the reason why it kind of looks the way it is, a European chalet. So in 1999, a Victorian style European looking chalet is going to be created to match and mirror the imagery and iconography of the Grand Floridian Hotel. The logo, themes, and style of this will change over time as they start adding a lot more details. And I was able to find on eBay, which I thought was pretty cool, the very first of the pamphlets that they gave out. So they used to every year, they haven't done this in years, or since I think the last time they did a pamphlet was 2013.
Yeah.
And this showed you the gingerbread house. It's just called Gingerbread House. And inside the window of this pamphlet, for those that are listening, is just a shadow of a gingerbread man.
He's like, let me out.
It was open from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. As we open up, there's lots of, if you want to screenshot this for those that are watching, you can see all the items that are in here, but it was lollipops, assorted chocolate bars, cookie bags, signature items, gingerbread ornaments, chocolates, and they also had gluten-free items in 1999. And fun fact, you could actually use the Disney dining plan on a couple of the snacks like the white chocolate cranberry oatmeal cookies or the truffle pops. They did, of course, sell cookies, and the infamous, most famous of all of the cookies that they had are the gingerbread shingles. So gingerbread shingles are part of, and this has been the tradition the entire time because this is made out of gingerbread. But let's talk about the actual bake of this house. So like a little bit of construction. Again, this has a lot of details in it. We're high spotting and going quick. The timeline of construction starts sometime in July as they start baking. So they start doing like dough mix-ins in midsummer, so into July, and then August is when they start having to bake over 10,000 gingerbread shingles.
Whoa, they start in July making those
they
things?
start doing like planning and getting all the dough ready and all that stuff because the dough is Austrian, right? And it requires the dough to cure for 2 months.
What?
This allows the spices to meld and structure to become rigid enough to withstand the Florida humidity. So it takes a while to make this sucker.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I would have guessed they started that early.
Yeah, so they cure the dough. I misspoke about when they bake it. They actually bake it in October. So, and then the build out starts in November. But each one of the shingles is unique because not only is it a spiced gingerbread recipe, but then it also has chocolate on the back, and that acts more for structure. So when they're gluing them on with icing, but also it's like a moisture barrier so they don't rot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, the flavor of this gingerbread, and I'm going to show you a more traditional one. And that is going to be Lebkuchen. And Lebkuchen is, I'm probably butchering this, is Germany's spice Christmas cookie that started in the 13th century with a bunch of monks, which, by the way, we're looking at a drawing of a monk making Lebkuchen, and homeboy's got no shoes on. So I hope you like toe jam with your gingerbread. Now, the original recipe of this contained flour and spices, particularly cinnamon, clove, and ginger. And this was developed like back in the Middle Ages, technically in 1409 in Nuremberg was the very first time that Lebkuchen is mentioned by monks in ancient text. And although ancient Egyptians and Romans had also made something that was kind of similar. They were known as honey cakes. In Roman, it was panis mellitus, which translates to sweet bread. And if you want this is a traditional version picture of Lebkuchen. If you have an Aldi around you, you can get some of these more traditional versions. And in fact, like the certain locations, if you don't know this in general, this is just kind of a fun thing. If you're ever doing a resort day, it's really fun to take a stop at the Grand Floridian, the Contemporary, which has a castle. So we have the Grand Floridian's gingerbread house. The castle is over at the Contemporary, and the Carousel, which is over at Beach Club. And all three of those locations will actually sell a different version of gingerbread. So this is Lebkuchen with that chocolate glaze on the back. There is also different versions of gingerbread. This is a Polish version that is known as Perenicki, and that one is more of like a loaf cake, so it's going to be a lot softer. And unlike like an Americanized one, this which has like molasses in it, this is almost all traditionally honey. And honey, cinnamon, ginger, clove, nutmeg, allspice, sometimes even pepper and star anise is used in it as well.
If it doesn't have molasses, I feel like it's not gingerbread for me. I need molasses in mine.
Right. Well, you'd be ticked because technically you would call the 1999 version of this not gingerbread because it contains no molasses.
Oh, no.
The actual build out of this, which happens in November, it has a wooden skeleton, which is stored in a warehouse for 10 months out of the year. So that gets assembled first. The mortar, they don't use any kind of glue or any adhesive. This is all done with royal icing, although they are kind of cheating because they do have a wooden base, but how else would this thing stay up?
Right.
Which is egg whites and powdered sugar for the royal icing. We just use that. If you're ever making gingerbread houses and you don't want to buy those really expensive kits, let me give you what we do in the LaVecchia household, which is super frugal. We buy graham crackers because they're already rectangular, very easy to build modular systems. We build 2-story houses with structures, and it's very easy to build roof systems or windows or whatever you want to build out of it. Graham crackers are the way to go, unless you want to, do it from scratch. But don't buy those kits, man. They're like $15 to like, and they come with icing. The icing is terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, royal icing is egg whites and powdered sugar, and that stuff turns into cement. Trust me. The dough consists of 800 pounds of flour, 600 pounds of powdered sugar, 700 pounds of cocoa or chocolate. Then it has 1,050 pounds of honey, which is also a natural preservative. If you don't know history of honey, like they've gone into Egyptian pyramids and honey doesn't spoil. So they've found in tombs of pharaohs honey that's perfectly safe to eat. So go jump into a pyramid and eat some honey, kids. It's perfectly safe.
Has anybody eaten it, though? Is the question.
I don't know. It's probably some maniac.
I don't think I
would you,
want to
if
be
somebody
that one.
gave you a spoonful of it and they tested it and made sure that it was completely like safe and had no bacteria, would you take the plunge and eat pharaoh honey?
No, I would not.
Interesting.
That's scary. It's scary to me. No, thank you. I'm good.
The honey scary or the fact that it's old?
It's old. Gross. Ew.
Okay, so just to note, if you get old, Kate will think you're gross.
No!
Kidding. All right, this is 14 to 16 feet tall, depending on the year, and it contains 35 pounds of spices, mainly cinnamon, clove, and ginger. It takes roughly about 160 hours of decorating and 400 plus hours of baking. They have, in the more modern times of the gingerbread house, they have added things like hidden Mickeys to the structure. They have hidden Mickeys. They also have characters. Last year, which was really fun for the 25th anniversary, they added these like little tiny like Christmas trees, like faux Christmas trees that were decorated like the characters, which you can see here on the vestibule and on the second layer deck. But what happens when you have to get rid of this thing? And that's when they use the Disney Bee Yard. For those that don't know, they strip off the edible gingerbread off the wood, and they bring the sticky wooden frame covered in sugar and icing to the Disney tree farm, where thousands of local bees are released upon the wood. They eat the sugar off the frames, cleaning it better than it would be with a pressure washer. And then the bees return to make hives and make honey, and then the honey is harvested and used in the parks. Now, this is just an aside and has nothing to do with history or anything, but like I had said, there are several different types of gingerbread on property. My favorite is actually located at La Petite Cafe. This is in the Riviera. Easy ride on the Skyliner from either Epcot's International Gateway or Hollywood Studios. Skyliner station. And this one is that Lebkuchen, and it does have the chocolate on the back. It's really tasty, and I love that glaze that's on it. It makes it really, really moist, but also has kind of like a little bit of a textural crunch on the outside, but then really soft on the inside. It is by far my favorite. I actually think the gingerbread shingles taste like dirt. They are horrible. It is like I am eating roofing.
Ew.
Is how I feel when I have those ones. So skip the shingles, go for cookies. Carousel has some good ones. The Contemporary has some good ones, but the best one is at La Petite Cafe.
So before we dive into my second story, I wanted to take a quick little break and talk about a few of the things we got going on at Walrus Carp and Disney Cicerone. So Kirk, what do you got going on over there?
Well, we have all of our holiday merch, of course. And to me, what says the holiday like, oh, what fun it is to ride. This has been by far one of our best-selling pieces of merch. We made the monorail one last year, and then this year we made a Skyliner one. But I digress. I have to give my love to one of my favorite designs that we have, which is for, of course, a Muppet Christmas Carol with no cheeses for us Mises, which is probably one of my favorite lines of that song.
Yeah.
And we got some little
European Victorian London Charles Dickens mice without any cheeses.
Oh, so sad.
So yeah, but you can go to walruscarp.com and get any of our holiday merch, and I appreciate you all. Thank you. And Kate, what do you got going on?
Well, I've been really, really busy writing this whole year, really, all the time. But I actually finished the third book in my Moments of Magic series, which is now with my early readers and will be out in early 2026. So that is the third book in my nonfiction series that explores the way we experience the Disney parks through the lens of Disney history. And this is the second book in the series, which is A Glimmer of Pixie Dust. This one focuses more on hope. The first one is A Glimpse of the Magic, which is back there. And that one focuses more on like magic and wonder. And then the third book in the series is going to focus more on love and all the different ways we experience love through that lens of Disney history. So that will be out. Look for it early next year. But I do have an exclusive Distory listener discount on signed books and bundles that's available at disneycicerone.com. It's 15% off any signed book or bundle here for the holidays. Just use the code Distory Holiday Magic, all one word, no capitals, and you'll get 15% off. And I'll sign it myself. I'll even personalize it for free. So yeah, I have got signed books now, which is kind of fun. So
I love that.
Yeah, so that's what we're working on over here. But let's dive back into the history because we have to talk about how Walt Disney didn't like Christmas. I know. I know. So let's chat a little bit about that because that's kind of a big statement. Because obviously, I'm sure that there's parts of Christmas Walt Disney did love. But this actually comes from a quote from his wife, Lillian Disney. She did an interview with Bob Thomas in the 1970s after Walt had passed, kind of sharing a little bit about his life, mainly for the biography that he wrote, Walt Disney American Original, which is a fabulous read if you have not picked it up yet. But this quote comes directly from Lillian Disney, and she said, "Walt didn't like holidays because he couldn't work on them. Everybody took off for the day at the studio. Christmas didn't mean a great deal to him, and when he got through with the festivities, he went to his room and read, usually. He never wasted time. He liked to set up the children's toys, and he did the train one year, but he just couldn't sit and visit with people." I relate to that, honestly. I'm not a terribly social animal, and I'm like, as soon as I can be done with social time and go retreat and go read my books, I'm there. So I feel Walt's in that way. I'm also kind of a workaholic, and he just hated it that he had to stop working because he enjoyed his work so much. He had to stop working and pause and rest and do holiday stuff when he wanted to just keep going. But of course, he had to give everybody time off, and he did for the holidays. But that's why he wasn't a big fan of them, though, which I think would surprise a lot of people.
I'm looking at the picture. He looks so happy to be around Santa, and all I could think of is him like being Bob or being Scrooge and being like, "All right, come in at 8:30, Santa. You get an extra half hour."
Well, I do also have some interesting facts from Lillian about how Walt gave gifts, and it turns out he wasn't great at that either. So lots of Christmas joy in this one. But she said you couldn't give Walt anything that really pleased him. He bought gifts for me, often perfume because he could order it by phone, but usually I would have to exchange it because it wouldn't be something I liked. Occasionally he would buy me things like antique jewelry he knew I wanted. Once a jeweler sent up some pins for me to see, and I said they were too expensive, but Walt later ordered them for me anyway, which I think is really sweet. So it's like, when he knew that she really wanted something, he got it for her. It wasn't like he was like totally, not great gift-giving husband. But she did say he didn't really like to shop for the girls and me. One time he handed me a pamphlet on fur coats and said, "Here's your Christmas present." So she got to pick out her own fur coat. I never really bought him anything that he liked. Once I bought him a firebox for the fireplace made of brass. He looked at the firebox and said, "I'll get you a cord of wood next year." Says if he found out I wanted something, he would go out and buy it, but he hated to shop. So Walt wasn't huge on the gift givings. This is a photo of like their Christmas tree in their home in the Walt Disney family home. And you can see it's a lot of Mickey Mouse is present there, as well as their tree with all the tinsel, which was very trendy at that time. I did also have a note from Joyce Carlson, who worked in the WED model shop. She said at Christmas time, we'd have a little party and Walt would bring little compacts, face powder, nylons, cosmetics, and he'd go around to all the girls and you could pick what you wanted. Merry Christmas. So, it's like he did give out gifts and enjoyed doing that, but he didn't enjoy buying them or shopping for them or a lot of those things, or even getting them, apparently, because he didn't like most of what he got. But he did get his wife Lillian a very memorable gift one particular year. This story is from Walt himself. And he said, "When we got our first home, I wanted a dog. And my wife would have nothing to do with dogs. For some reason, she did not like dogs. She said, 'Oh, they get hair on everything. They're dirty and they're dog odors.' So I got a book on dogs, and the chow did not shed hair or have fleas and had very little odor. She said, if I had to have a dog, that's the kind of dog I would want. That's what I wanted. The next day, I went out and bought a chow and kept it under wraps until Christmas. I bought it when it was about 6 to 8 weeks old, and it was about a month before Christmas. We had our Christmas tree, and her sister Hazel would come over with her little niece, that's Marjorie Sewell, who was about 11 then. And the niece was always the one who took the presents from under the tree and took them around and gave them to everybody. We had a kind of little family Christmas. I picked up my chow from the dog kennel in the afternoon, and I took it over and kept it at my brother Roy's, who had a house next door. I got a big hat box, and I got a big ribbon and put that on it. When the time came, I went over, put the little puppy in the hat box, tied it up with a ribbon, and when they were all busy, I put it over by the tree, and my niece was tipped off, so my wife didn't see me bring it in. So then my niece went over and got this, and she said, 'Oh, who is this for?' It says, 'To Lily from Santa Claus.' So my niece brought this big hat box over and put it in front of my wife on her lap, and my wife said, 'Oh, Walt, you didn't.' Now, she didn't know I'd bought a dog. She thought I'd bought her a hat, and that's one thing she doesn't want anybody to do. She wants to buy her own hats. So she was upset because she thought I bought her a hat. And she also really hated his taste in hats, by the way. That's also a thing. So when she started to open it, it moved, and then she let out a scream. And when she opened it, this little chow stuck his head out of there. And from that time on, it was her baby. It had to sleep in our bedroom. And this is Lillian with their little dog. And
very cute.
The one most wonderful thing about this story, though, is that this particular story with the hat box is actually what inspired the one that we know in Lady and the Tramp, which was Disney's very first original story that they ever wrote and created as an animated film. So you see Lady come out of the hat box. That is from Walt's gift to Lillian on that Christmas. All right, Kirk. What do you got next? It's your last one, right? This
is my last one, and we're going to make this super quick because I just want to talk about one of my favorite traditions that happens across globally at the Disney parks, and those are ride overlays.
Yay.
Now, I am going to have a little audience participation as well as Kate participation, but you get time to think about it, Kate.
Okay.
Think about if you could take any existing attraction that does not have a holiday overlay for Christmas, what would you pick? And maybe a little bit of why. If not, totally cool. But you have this entire segment to think about it.
Okay.
So audience members as well, fire off into the live stream chat or write in our comments here on Distory. So First, the most famous of all of the ride overlays is Haunted Mansion Holiday. If you ever want to listen to the episodes about Haunted Mansion Holiday, Kate and I covered it exclusively, and it's very in depth about all of the decorations. Absolutely beautiful. It's got this wonderful Nightmare Before Christmas. I love everything about this overlay, and the fact that Walt Disney World got mailed to Tokyo makes me so upset because we almost had it, but we never got it. Although it is, I do feel for Disneylanders as the overlay does last from like August until like
6 months.
February.
It's so like, long. It's way too long.
It's way too long. Like I could agree with maybe a September or October through January, but August is wild.
But listen,
how long
we
it
never
lasts.
get the Haunted Mansion as the Haunted Mansion on Halloween, which I think is a crime, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it's
yeah.
it's our one like scary, haunted ride, and we don't get it for Halloween.
Well, maybe it should just be November through January. I think, shorter time period, people can enjoy the mansion as it is, and then you get the Christmas overlay for it. I think that would be a better time frame.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But I do love the one thing I remember when I wrote it, and I love writing it. It's one of my favorites. Every time I'm at Disneyland and it's that time period, I tend to ride this at least 2 to 3 times per day, per visit to Disneyland. But I love the gingerbread house and the way it smells. And it changes every year, right? Doesn't the gingerbread house change?
Yep, they have a unique one every year. Yep.
I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
Now, another one that we had covered in the past as well for Distory. So some of these are repeat offenders that if you want to do a deeper dive rather than my just quick snapshot flash. And this is another one that depresses me greatly, is that Disneyland has such an amazing overlay for It's a Small World with over 400,000 lights on the facade alone. Also, they do the projection show. And then within the interior itself has all these fun characters and carolers and snowflakes designs and angels, and it is spectacular, and it makes me very upset that we don't have anything like this in Walt Disney World.
It's wonderful.
I think it's one of the best overlays.
And seeing it light up, like they have a lighting ceremony for it, and seeing it light up is really magical too. So
yeah. Now, granted, I will say, the reason why Walt Disney World could never get at least the exterior is because all that exterior is outdoors in California. Yeah. And our facade is
crammed
an
at a
interior
corner.
One. Yeah. So I've said this before. They've never completed the additions of Disney characters within the individual countries, which they have said that would be a refurbishment and a plussing of that attraction in Disney World. That's never come to fruition. So can we just turn it to Rapunzel and move on? Rapunzel boat ride, move on. It's right there. Tangled bathrooms, right into Tangled boat ride.
Yeah.
We don't need
if it
Small
wasn't
World.
so awful already, like if Small World wasn't so awful there, I would be like, how dare you? But I'm also like,
Yeah, but it's how dare you anything, dude? Like our Tom Sawyer is literally sand now. I saw it yesterday. It's just sand. There's no water. It's just it reminds me of, what's kind of interesting from like a fun history perspective of watching them completely demo that area is it looks like the construction of Disney World. Because when do you ever get to see a moment in time where the land looks brand new, untouched, minus clearing?
Yeah,
that's what it looks like.
Fair.
It's really so from that perspective, it's really interesting. And there's going to be elements and areas that are untouched right now that will be touched for like Villains Land and whatnot. So I think it's really spectacular, particularly when Big Thunder opens up, because they're not going to build a giant wall to hide it from Big Thunder. So we'll be getting our construction updates from Big Thunder and from Splash Mountain. Or Tiana's.
Yeah.
And of course, how could I forget the Jingle Cruise, which we have a soft spot at Distory for the Jungle Cruise. We've talked about this one at length. So if you want to go back and listen and learn about all the overlay there, it's fantastic. There are some things that I don't know a great deal about and didn't go too in depth. I just wanted to make this a high spot of all the overlays that exist or existed. But one over in DCA, which I've never experienced, I've only experienced Halloween over there, is going to be Tomater. So the Tow Mater, Tow and Salvage gets their very own overlay with Mater's Jingle Jamboree.
Yeah.
And Mater sings songs like Christmas and Radiator Springs. And Larry the Cable Guy actually does sing that one.
It's really fun.
Yeah, it looks really fun. I mean, look how much fun they're having. So there's nothing like on the ride, though. It's like mainly just the exterior queue. Like none of the ride vehicles themselves looked like they have any kind of change.
No, you get the music is a change. And they do the same thing for Halloween time, or Halloween as they call it there, where they have special music for that. And that's because the locals need change. And there's a lot of people, most of Disneyland is locals that go there. So
yeah, they want to see, not only you see a lot of menu changes, but then also shows, events. There's so many ticketed events in California versus Disney World. Because remember, it's like mainly tourists, where in Florida, and it's mainly locals in California.
Yeah.
So makes sense. And you need new opportunities to be able to monetize, Kate.
Yeah.
Another one we have in DCA is Luigi's Joy to the Whirl, which looked super cute. And I just saw this one of Radiator Springs, and I thought that was adorable.
It's just beautiful there. Yeah.
I really love this ride. Like, there's not many flat rides I enjoy, because I tend to just think of them as filler. And a lot of times they're not original. They just tend to be like an off-the-shelf Zamperla attraction that's like mildly themed. But this one is a great little trackless fun ride with some changes over, and it's got an amazing theme. This is way better than Luigi's Flying Tires, which I did get to experience. I know that was one of the rides that I think you missed, but you weren't missing much. This is way better.
No, I saw it actually. Well, I mean, I didn't get to go on it, but because I had a infant at the time, so I was on the infant,
right.
And my husband went on it with our son, who was a toddler. So I have pictures of them on it, but I didn't get to do it myself. So
okay,
yeah.
Party exclusive. We've got Space Mountain. So Space Mountain gets, for Very Merry Christmas, gets lighting effects. It also gets Mannheim Steamroller Orchestra playing, which is always fun. Then our Speedway here in Walt Disney World also gets a little overlay. It's mainly lights and audio, but I think it's actually a nice effect. I wish, sadly, that it was available for everybody all the time, but I think this year they might have changed that. I got to stick around and see at night if they allow people to do the overlay. Probably one of the best ones is Living with the Lands with the glimmering greenhouses. So many lights, and it just looks so dang beautiful, to the point where this is like the only time where Living with the Land should have more than a 30-minute wait. And you get our hidden Mickey turns into a hidden Rudolph, which is super
cute.
fun.
Yeah, I love that.
Another Very Merry exclusive is going to be the Mad Tea Party, just like they do for Not So Scary, is it gets lighting effects as well as a music overlay. Now, one that not a lot of people know is in Hollywood Studios, they get Alien Swirling Saucers. Every fifth song will be a Christmas song.
Oh,
and that's
fun.
for regular guests as well. They don't do the lighting anymore. I wish they did.
Yeah.
Just for when that Christmas song plays. They don't do that anymore. But it used to have lighting effects, but the song is still there, which is fun. And then in Very Merry, they also have a Monsters overlay with Mike Wazowski. And it's just them telling silly, more holiday-themed jokes and whatnot. And then if we jump to Japan, they have the Country Bear Theater Christmas Special Jingle Bell Jamboree. And all of the characters get snowy, Christmassy, Clausian, like Santa outfits and hats. And I think that is just absolutely spectacular.
Cute.
I wish we got that at any of the other domestic parks. And then who can forget the horrible nightmare that was 3 years ago in 2022 when Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind in Epcot got the holiday remix, which only played one song that never changed, and that was Run, Run, Rocket. It was so disliked by guests that it never returned.
R.I.P. Run, Run, Rocket.
Those are all of my holiday overlays, which leads me to my question, Miss Kate. What, if you could give a holiday overlay to an attraction, would you pick?
That's a really tough question. Because, especially in Disneyland, like there's already so many. I was thinking like, would I do pirates? Would I want them to be Christmassy? I was like, that doesn't really fit that story very well. I was like thinking it through. I like the idea of Mr. Toad's getting a Christmas overlay. It would be kind of interesting. It would be really fun to decorate that house for Christmas. Would be really fun, and add some Christmas touches and things he almost runs into, which like Christmas trees and stuff like that. I think would be really neat. The only other thing I thought about is one that would be really. They'd have to get very creative with it. Is what if they turned Spaceship Earth into like they had a Christmas overlay for that, and they I don't even...
a lot of times when I think about these things, it really is just lights, colors, and music. So it's now Spaceship Earth you'd want the narration to change too, and have that be.
It would have to be
like talk about more Christmas, like Christmas communication.
Yes, I don't even know what it would be like. It would take some creativity, I think, to sort that out. But they go through, different areas of the world. So it'd be kind of interesting to integrate, whatever it is that there is their celebration. It wouldn't be Christmas necessarily, but their specific holiday or thing that they celebrate in their region of the world would be interesting. So I don't know. It was just a thought, but that's kind of what I would lean to. We did get some in our chat as well. Dean says, I'm thinking Soarin' overlay where you could get to fly over the big Christmas events, icons across the world, followed by New Year's Eve fireworks, which would be pretty neat. I also really love this idea from our historian friend Joshua Harris, who says totally for relocating It's a Small World and replacing it with Mark Davis's Enchanted Snow Palace, which that would be a win. I would enjoy that. I agree. So.
A very Smuggy's Christmas would be Star Wars. That would be. They already did that horrendous Christmas special, but I could see something. I think personally, for me, I would have to. Originally I went to like Tiana's, and I think Big Thunder would be really fun.
Yeah,
Big Thunder would be really tremendous, and it would be easy to do.
Yeah.
However, I think something that actually would work and would be wonderful would be Frozen. I would love to see the Frozen ride, and you could see old Flemmy Grab or whatever the troll's name was.
Well, they could have the song, right, when we're together.
Right, like you could change what she's singing instead of singing, Let It Go. You could have her sing that. Or at the very end, the first Christmas in Forever could be the ending scene.
That would
People
be really
would love
sweet.
That.
Yeah.
That one, I think, would do extremely well. And you could actually spill that out into the pavilion itself with more of an Aradel, because what do they have? Like, what's their, the bell? They could bring the Arendelle bell into there as well. I think that would be cool.
Oh, that would be lovely. That would be.
I think that one actually fits, but otherwise Big Thunder would be cool. So
I love that.
Okay, Kate, you got to wrap this sucker up. What we got to learn the last Christmas story about the Disney parks.
Okay. So this one, I have a great quote. Just kick this one off because his quote is from Bill Justice. And he said, "A bad movie inspired a good parade." And so what we're going to talk about, of course, is the soldiers that are in the Christmas parade. But before we do that, we have to talk about where they came from just a little bit. And that is Babes in Toyland, of course, from the live action musical that Disney released in theaters December 14th, 1961. So I have this wonderful inter-office communication from Walt Disney to Bill Justice and Exitensio. And he said, while we were getting the Hans Christian Andersen material in shape, there's a sequence in Babes in Toyland March of the Toys that I would like you to work on, and it would be a puppet type animation. Ward Kimball is handling the overall picture, so if you would get in touch with him, he'll explain it to you. This is from March 17th, 1959. And of course, it's signed by Walt Disney itself. So Bill Justice and Exitensio designed the toys for the March of the Toys in the movie Babes in Toyland. And after filming, X was gifted the princess and the pink ballerina dolls from the set of Babes in Toyland, and then he gave them to his daughters, Tori and Judy Ann, and then asked the costume department to make each of his daughters a special wardrobe for their dolls, which they both treasured the rest of their lives, which I thought was just a very sweet story.
That's cute.
Yeah. But anyway, they worked on the stop motion animation for the soldiers in the picture in particular, so you can kind of see them working on the toys here, building them for this movie. I found some of the stories from the book Xavier Exitensio, The Legacy of an Artist, Imagineer, and Disney Legend. If you haven't picked this book out, it's new and it's has a lot of information about Exitensio in it. Really fabulous read. But that's where some of the stories come from today. also another interview with Bill Justice as well. But you can see them working on these toys and putting them together for the movie. And then how they filmed the sequence with the soldiers is actually quite interesting, because in order to get the soldiers to stand up properly during filming, they covered a steel plate with wood textured paper and then put a magnet on the foot of each soldier to hold the toy upright to capture their position every 2 frames. So that's how they got them to march. So you can see them here. It's like, it's not a real wood floor. It's just like metal covered with wood paper, essentially, is what it is. And then this is what it looked like in the film itself. And you wouldn't have been able to tell that that's what it is, but that's how they got them to stand upright and then move them. As how they achieve that iconic marching movement. They also use the same effect and the exact same toys in Mary Poppins when they're doing the spoonful of sugar cleanup scene. So you see some toy soldiers, climb up into the toy box in that scene as well. That also is the exact same toys from that movie as well. So you probably know the soldiers from a different context, though, because they are in Disney's Christmas parades. So you know these toy soldiers that go marching down the street. They're like one of my very favorite parts of this parade. So we first saw these soldiers in December of 1961 in a parade in Disneyland that was called the Parade of Toys and Parade of All Nations. We've talked about the Parade of All Nations before, so we won't get into that. We actually did a whole episode on Disney's Christmas parades back in the day, but that was a long time ago. But so I'm just kind of doing a little refresher here. But basically, they needed to promote this movie. And so Walt was like, hey, we got to do something to do that. So they opened up an exhibit in the Opera House on Disneyland's Main Street on December 17th of 1961 with sets and props from the film to drive interest. And then they're like, we got to put all of these toys in this parade as well to just kind of promote this movie. That's where they came from. So this is the first time we see the giant wooden soldiers and the silly marching reindeer. And they were designed by Ward Kimball and Exitensio. They also have a whole bunch of other toys that came from the movie that they kind of brought to life. You can see a bunch of mice and a mouse trap here. And these soldiers that have these, balloons that are basically a blown up version of what was in the film. This one's also like a little pirate ship when we have these soldiers on horseback that kind of like move. They go up and down like they're riding as they move, as they roll along the street. Oh, and then I also have this is a tree that's from that film. But in terms of designing the soldiers themselves, Bill Justice said it was tough. We had to take the soldiers we designed at Disney Studios and put somebody in them to wear. So we had to make compromises. They needed to look exactly like our toy soldiers in the film, but real people had to move in them. They're still using those soldiers today in the parade, although they have to occasionally rebuild them. And they said they're also still using the reindeer that X designed and had funny looking reindeer tongues with their tongues hanging out. Bill said, when I was doing those first costumes, Walt said, Bill, always remember, we don't want to torture the people who are wearing them. Keep in mind that they've got to be as comfortable as possible. It was that important to him. Oh yeah, and here's the reindeer, what they look like as well with their tongues hanging out. But my very favorite part about these soldiers, Kirk, is something that once you know this, you will never be able to unsee it, okay? There is actually a signature on these soldiers by Exitensio, who was the one that created them. Because if you look at their straps, they form an X. And that is the shape of an X was put there on purpose by Exitensio as a signature to his design, because that's his name. So essentially his name is on all of these soldiers on the front and back as a big X. Even years after Exitensio retired, he still went to Disneyland specifically to watch the Christmas Fantasy Parade to see the soldiers and reindeer he created, which I think is really special because he just loved them that much. So anyway, just a kind of a sweet story about Exitensio and something you can look for anytime you see those soldiers in Disneyland. Know that not only did they come from the Babes in Toyland promotion from 1961, but also that Exitensio actually signed his name on every single soldier.
I love them. They're an icon. Without them, you wouldn't have the parade.
Yeah, it's true. They're my favorite part when they come stomping by. I love watching them. Them and the reindeer and the snowmen, I think, are my 3 favorite in that parade. But yeah, that is pretty much it. That brings us to 6 obscure Disney Christmas stories that we got to share with you guys today. We hope you enjoyed kind of going a little bit all over the place, but really fun variety of stories to share. Kirk, did you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
I hope you guys have a very Merry Christmas, and thanks for listening to some fun, obscure Disney Christmas history.
Yeah, thanks for being with us all year, guys. We really appreciate you hanging out with us here on Distory and hearing some stories all year round. And it was fun to take a little break from the tower, but we'll probably get back to it next time. But until then, have a wonderful holiday, however you celebrate. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time on Distory.